Okay, I think we'll get started. Welcome everyone to the 5th Annual Watershed Conference. We're so glad to have you join us for this session called How Can My Town Fund Green Infrastructure Projects? So on the next slide, we'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. We recognize that the land and water now under our care is the traditional and ancestral territory of the Lenni Lenape. We pay respect to Lenape peoples, past, present, and future, and their continuing presence in the homeland and throughout the Lenape diaspora. We respect their knowledge, culture, and tradition, which have contributed to the conservation of land and water. We also acknowledge that historic white supremacy and environmental racism practices have caused disproportionate environmental and climate impacts on people of color and overburdened communities. The Watershed Institute pledges to work for clean water and a healthy environment, including in communities that have been unjustly affected by systematic racism and environmental pollution. Next, a special thanks to our 5th Annual Watershed Conference sponsors, Princeton Hydro, Leigh Foundation, and the Musconetcong Watershed Association. Now I'm pleased to introduce our speakers, Anne, Leigh, and Heather. You can go in any order and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Anne Heasly, Sustainable Jersey.
I'm Leigh Peterson. I'm the COO of the Water Bank, partnering with the DEP.
Hi, I'm Heather Knizhnik. I'm with the DEP in the Municipal Finance and Construction Program, working on water bank projects.
Thank you so much. So Anne, if you want to get started, you can share your.
Let's see if I can do that. Trying to
into presentation mode, I believe.
Yep, I'm trying to get there. Let's see. There we go. And then let me just, so presumably you're just seeing the slide?
It looks good.
Okay, great. Thanks, Priscilla, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to talk about some of the resources and tools that we have at Sustainable Jersey that can help municipalities and schools manage stormwater. So this afternoon, I'm going to give a quick overview of Sustainable Jersey, who we are, talk about our green infrastructure actions, and then talk about the overall grants program, and then specific grants for green infrastructure, and then some of the projects that we funded and maybe some ideas for how you could use those funds. So Sustainable Jersey is a certification program for municipalities and schools that are interested in demonstrating that they're sustainable. And yesterday, Stuart Clark in his keynote address talked about, their theory of change and that decision makers have science-based information and the burden of an engaged and informed citizenry. And I think that's really something that we, it's a very similar approach that we have at Sustainable Jersey. We like to provide our local advocates with tools that they can use to help them advance sustainability. And we do this one municipality and one school at a time. So, how we do that, we have a number of subject area experts like nonprofits. The Watershed Institute, for example, has been instrumental in helping us, as well as state agencies and academics develop. All of them work together with us to develop actions that municipalities and schools can use to achieve their sustainability goals. And so we have tools and resources and guidances that we provide to help them do that work, but we also provide grants and technical assistance. And then we recognize their accomplishments through our certification program. And so later this month at the League of Municipalities Conference, we'll be recognizing 52 municipalities that applied for certification this year that are now eligible for that. And it's a pretty popular program, and you can see from the map that either probably a school or a municipality near you or that you live in is participating at some level in our program. And so let's just look a little more in detail at our actions. Our actions are the tools or the recipes that we've developed, again, with those experts. And they guide communities on how to do sustainable actions. So the action itself is on our website, and it's really detailed information about why it's important to do that work, who should be involved, how much time it takes, exactly what you should do and how to do it. And then we provide some resources, information to help you do that. And also we spotlight different towns or different municipalities that have done that work. So our green infrastructure actions in our municipal program are found in our land use and transportation actions. So if you go to the actions tab and hit that, and you go down to the land use and transportation category, you'll find our green infrastructure actions. And similarly, in our schools program, on our website, you'll find our green infrastructure actions in the schools, school grounds category. So all these actions, these tools or these recipes are, they're available to anyone. You don't have to be a participant in our program, but they are good resources and they're out there and accessible on our website. So just to go through the different actions more broadly in our municipal program, we have green infrastructure planning, which is really looking at the impervious cover in your town and then setting goals for reducing it, and then implementing projects to do that. So we give you points for that. We also have an enhanced stormwater management control ordinance action, which is based on the model enhanced stormwater management ordinance that the Watershed Institute developed, or the New Jersey Future version. If a municipality adopts that more stringent ordinance, we can give you points for that in our program. So if you go above and beyond the state requirements. We also have a bike and a pedestrian improvement project, and how that links into water and green infrastructure is if you did a green street where you're capturing stormwater adjacent to the roadway, we can give you points for that project. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about our municipal water story action in a minute. But also in our schools program, we have, again, a sort of assessment and planning green infrastructure action, and then one to reward schools that do implementation. So a little bit about the municipal water story. On the previous page, we had like Gold Star, and last year we launched a new level of recognition, the Gold Star in Water, for municipalities that go above and beyond in water actions. And one of the key activities that a municipality would need to do if they wanted to go for the Gold Star is develop what we call a municipal water story. So the Watershed Institute was really instrumental in helping us develop Water Gold, along with some other academics and other nonprofit organizations. And basically what the water story is an opportunity for a municipality to sort of take stock of water in all its forms, how it comes into that community, its drinking water, its storm water, its access to water, and then thinking about some identifying, the key issues, and then finding actions in our program to address those. So while it's not a grant program, we did have an opportunity with funding from New Jersey American Water last year. We had a call for municipalities interested in undertaking this action, and we were able to award one municipality and provide technical assistance to them. So we're working with Asbury Park. They're working on that project right now, and so later this spring we hope to have that completed. So that was a technical assistance opportunity, but you know, if your municipality wanted to partner with a Watershed Institute or another nonprofit to undertake this action, you could apply for a grant in our grants program. So let's turn to our grants program. So overall at Sustainable Jersey, you know, the grants program is really instrumental in getting municipalities to undertake our actions. You know, it provides funding every year. Fortunately, we've had sustained and generous support from the PSC&G Foundation and the New Jersey Education Association and the Gardenier Environmental Fund to help us annually. And then since 2009, we've distributed over $6.5 million in 1,000 different projects. So, you know, obviously that's really important to seeing, getting that sustainable action operating at the local level. And, you know, we have separate cycles for our municipal program and a separate cycle for our schools program, but we do encourage collaboration. And we try to ensure that certified schools and school districts, as well as certified municipalities, have a shot at that funding. So they typically get priority, but we also look at oftentimes the need and the abilities in those municipalities to undertake the work. So, you know, we try to keep, we do keep our website updated with any funding opportunity that we're involved with. So, you know, there's a tab for grants in both our school website as well as our municipal program website. And there's opportunity on both those websites to register to get a biweekly e-blast where we describe resources for undertaking our actions. Some of those might be technical assistance, some of those might be funding, some of those might be conferences like this where you can get information and learn how to, you know, to help you do the work. So I highly encourage you to sign up on our website. And so this slide shows you the general cycle of our annual grants. So again, we have a municipal set of grants, and then we have a schools. And so right now we have the Gardenier cycle, and that's a specific cycle for energy projects. And I think, you know, there is some overlap between energy and water. For example, if your municipality happens to control your drinking water supply, which some do, or your wastewater, you may be able to find an energy savings project there. So unfortunately, that cycle is ending tomorrow, but you might want to look out for it next fall. Two cycles that are currently open in our schools program are the New Jersey Education Association grant cycle, as well as the PSC&G cycle. Those are general cycles for any kind of sustainability project that's related to an action that we have. So the NJEA is due on December 3rd, and the PSC&G one is for schools is open until March 11th. And then later this month at the New Jersey League of Municipalities, we'll announce our municipal cycle, again, a general cycle for municipalities doing sustainability actions. And those applications will be due in mid-February, and then the notification will come out in April, and the projects will commence in early May. And typically the projects are 1 or 2 year projects. We also work with other organizations to administer their funding opportunities. So we've worked with the New Jersey Department of Health on health and wellness, and the Nature Conservancy on their Roots to River project. And we recently awarded grants for schools working on food waste in partnership with funding from New Jersey DEP. And we know that later on in early December, we're going to be announcing technical assistance for complete streets projects for municipalities that are in the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority territory. And then in the spring, for municipalities that are involved in the, let me go back one slide, that are involved in the Atlantic City Electric, if they're in that territory, we're going to have another round of the Sustainable Communities Grant Program. And that allows you to apply for funding for a number of resiliency projects, as well as environmental stewardship. So I'll provide some examples of that in a minute here. You know, our PSE&G grant cycle is our most competitive and versatile, but it allows you to get funding for a number of projects. So, you know, if you're interested in doing that, you should look for that announcement in later this month, in a couple weeks. In the schools program, specific green infrastructure funding is from the New Jersey Education Association grant program. That's open now, as well as the PSE&G. Both of them have funding limits, and but you can find out about both of them on our website. And the NJEA has a deadline of December 3rd, and it's $180,000 is available. So it's our least competitive school grant cycle. So we really encourage you to think about applying. So really, there's a lot of opportunities for advancing green infrastructure in your municipality and your school, but other sort of similar ideas for managing stormwater that aren't specifically green infrastructure are eligible. And this is a range of ideas, and I'm sure there could be more. And, you know, we do get often applications for rain gardens in our municipal program as well as our school program. And, you know, we encourage you to work with Rutgers or the Watershed Institute or another conservation project to help you identify where these kinds of projects should be located in your community. And, you know, they not only manage stormwater, but they're a great opportunity to educate your community. And so you can use these grants through our funding. You can use these grants to do these kinds of projects on municipal property and school district property, but it also can be used on private property. So some municipalities have offered free rain garden consulting and installation of rain gardens and rebate programs through our grant program. And we often have an education component where we ask you to put a sign out to help people understand what the project is and how it's a really important resource for your community. And the funding, you know, it can be used for a number of things. It has to go to the municipality or the school, but it can be re-granted out and it can be used for the planning or design of a project, and can be used for staff stipends for the installation or just the overall installation cost, or materials or signs related to the project, or for expenses for a ribbon cutting event. So it's pretty broad. And, you know, if you're planning a rain garden at a school location, it's a great learning opportunity. It was done here where the students were involved in the design process, and then it was also part of their curriculum. And these kinds of projects really can help sort of build momentum for sustainability in your either school or municipality. And students and their caregivers turn out to be a great volunteer base for actually getting the work done. And you might want to consider sort of an innovative approach for your rain garden like this school did, where they extended their gutter system to direct their stormwater from the roof to the ground. I know that anybody who's been to the Watershed Institute, they have that great sculpture out front that does that same kind of thing, sort of expresses the flow of water into the ground. And, we've also funded bioswales, so the more extensive rain garden that works in a parking lot to handle the stormwater. And then we've also funded green roofs, another way to manage water close to its source. And, those can be really made into a good learning project as well as a feature in your community. We've funded permeable paving, not like an extensive project because our grants are small, but it can be, the funding can be used to do a study. And so, some of the other folks on this panel are going to talk about larger pots of money. And sometimes you need to get a project to be what we call shovel ready. So you might want to think about applying for a grant to help you set the stage for a larger grant. And so, or you might be able to use the funding to do just a small small area of repaving. But we do encourage you to do studies. And we also encourage you to work with local nonprofits. Like in this example, Elizabeth City worked with Greenwork Elizabeth to actually do the green infrastructure installation and also to do education around it. So, you could work with your watershed organization or the Watershed Institute. We're happy to fund projects and putting them in the ground, but we're also happy to fund education around those projects. So you might want to consider asking for a grant to fund, to bring in a nonprofit organization to your school to educate your students on water issues. Some municipalities have used our funds to purchase rain barrels and then redistribute them throughout the community. They've also had students involved in decorating them. And then some of our larger grants have gone to communities that have wanted to do watershed management planning to help them address, water related issues and, resiliency. So, thinking ahead. And then again, we've done tree planting projects. And while the Roots to Rivers program, that's no longer going on, you could still apply through your municipality or your school to do a tree planting project with our funds. And maybe work with the watershed ambassadors and other folks. So like I know, there's opportunities to do tree planting. I just saw it in the Watershed Institute e-blast in Montgomery Township. So again, that's something that's out there, and maybe not tree planting, or small, dune restoration planting is also something that we funded. I mentioned that we had this new grant program through Atlantic City Electric, the Sustainable Communities Grant Program that we'll be announcing again this spring. The first round of projects that we funded are just being completed now. So you should be able to look at our website, later this spring when that announcement is out, and you can see what projects we funded. So anytime we have a grant program, we always have a list of the projects that were funded. You can find out in great detail how people use the money in these projects to advance sustainability. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me if it's a question about the action. And if you're interested in questions about our grants program, I suggest you reach out to Kate Volmar, our grants program coordinator. I really thank the Watershed Institute again for inviting me to talk, and I appreciate your time and attention, and just want to give you one more plug to think about applying for the New Jersey Education Association cycle that's open for schools right now. So with that, I'll stop sharing and I think turn it over to Leigh.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anne. Let me get my slides up and going. Switch this to a slideshow. Okay, let's get back a page. Hi, everyone. As I said when we started, my name is Leigh Peterson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the New Jersey Infrastructure Bank. We partner with the DEP to finance water projects throughout the state for municipalities and some private borrowers, in addition to also some of the universities in New Jersey. So an SR, the State Revolving Fund, which is what I'm representing, is basically a federal program that was set up in each of the states back in the 80s initially. So we've been around for quite a while. And unbelievably, there are still people who've never heard of us in the state, but we do a lot of outreach to try to, get to those people who haven't come into our program yet. So I'll give you a quick overview of the sort of the structure. So you'll see on the left, we've got the federal grants coming in from the EPA. So these are just your regular traditional annual grants, plus the ARPA funds that have been coming in this year, and hopefully some infrastructure funds once the infrastructure bill is passed. So the money flows in through there, and the state matches some of those funds as well. So those are our two sources of new funding. The DEP and the iBank also recirculate funds that have been paid back to us through the program into the water bank. So last year, to give you an idea of how large this program has become, we lent out approximately $700 million last year. So it's a very large program. Some of that is principal forgiveness, some of that is in loans that have to be paid back, but it's a huge pot of money for the municipalities within the state. In terms of eligible projects for green infrastructure, over the last few years, the DEP and us have been trying to, really, incentivize some of the municipalities to do some green infrastructure projects. So the eligible borrowers would be local government units, so your towns, your boroughs, your municipal utility authorities, also some counties. We are actually working with the county right now to do a project. And your regional water authorities. So anyone who really is responsible for a water system can come to us. There are some private entities that are eligible for the program as well, and they can come through public conduit borrowers. So if you have, say, a redevelopment project, we're working with one right now, the redeveloper themselves isn't eligible for a loan, but the town that they're working with, the city that they're working with, is going to be the borrower on that project. Although we're working with the developer themselves to get this project up and running. So there are ways to do it if you're not a local government unit yourself. And then the last category would be your 501c3s. So some private colleges and universities. We've got two projects right now with Rutgers that were funded in the last year, and actually a conduit project for Rutgers and the University Hospital up in Newark. So not necessarily green infrastructure projects, but just in terms of eligibility, those are the general eligibility categories. Green infrastructure projects, I don't know if everyone is familiar with what we call our IUP, our intended use plan. The intended use plan really lays out all of the detailed information regarding project eligibility, and I'm sure Heather will go through this a little bit in more detail. But just to give you an overview of the types of projects that we would fund, rain gardens, bioretention basins. We actually funded one in Hoboken for a 1 million gallon retention basin underneath a park. Our executive director likes to call it the giant bathtub. And that was a really innovative project up there. Engineered wetlands, rainwater harvesting, just your general things that you would expect. And if you had a project that, for instance, wasn't on this list, but you felt was, would fall under the green infrastructure category, it's always worth reaching out to the DEP and ourselves to just explain what it is you want to do. They are always willing to consider things that aren't necessarily identified, and if it's possible to bring them in under an eligibility criteria, they definitely look to make that possible for as many towns as they can. In terms of the approaches to stormwater funding, we're really looking this year at primarily CSO abatement projects. As many of you probably know, long-term control plans were due to the DEP last year to explain, how the municipalities with these CSOs were going to address the mounting problems. The flooding that continues to worsen within this throughout the state due to climate change is just exacerbating problems that have existed for a long time. And the CSO communities are also frequently disadvantaged communities to the larger old cities, the Newarks, the Camdens of the world, Peterson. So the communities that we are trying to also focus on in terms of environmental justice just happens to overlap with those that have the CSOs. In terms of financing CSO project, we're looking at up to $2 million of principal forgiveness. So that would be 50% of the project cost up to $4 million. For the second, for the other 50% of that first $4 million, a borrower is eligible to get 25% of that financed through a 0% loan at the DEP and 25% at the AAA market rate. So essentially, for a $4 million loan, a borrower would be paying, about a quarter of the AAA market rate. So it kind of, the kind of interest rates that really no one can obtain on their own throughout, through another program. Especially advantageous for, cities who may have a harder time borrowing. So while we do require that our borrowers have at least a BBB rating, really once you get below the, AA and A rating, this becomes extremely positive impact on the bottom line for these communities. Any project expenses over $4 million would then be financed at a rate of 50% of a 0% DEP loan and 50% at the AAA market rate. This is actually a picture of a garden in Camden on the waterfront that was financed. I believe it's called, it's the Phoenix Park. It's a beautiful park down on the waterfront. This year, there's also a new grant program that was introduced, and it's called the Osg Grant Program. The state has approximately $4 million available to it through this program, and they're looking to finance CSO projects and stormwater management needs, and they are focused on disadvantaged communities to try to get more of these funds into those communities. This project or this grant program is in the process right now of gathering letters of interest from different communities. The deadline was technically the end of October, but I believe that they're still accepting letters of interest to just try and get as many in as possible. The review and the ranking by the DEP will take place in early December, so there's still a little bit of time. And this would be a grant. It wouldn't be an SRF grant like we were just talking about. This is through another program. But again, this is grant money, so it doesn't need to be paid back. Another possible source of financing is through the Federal Storm Act. So FEMA also makes grants to states through various programs. In some of these programs, they may not be able to finance 100% of what the applicant needs. In those cases, the iBank can typically finance any of the difference there. So we've got borrowers who come into us who say have a $100 million project. FEMA is willing to finance 70% of that, and the other 30% you could finance through the iBank. And we also actually help borrowers do the submission of the requisitions and make sure that all of the information is accurate and complete. So we really do try to increase the acceptance ratio on the FEMA side because they are extremely particular about the information that is submitted and how it's submitted. So my team has, a few years of experience doing this, and it's a huge benefit that we honestly don't really tout often enough, but it's a huge benefit to borrowers to be able to have us handle that process for them as just part of our loan review process. So, they're looking right now, they're focusing on low-lying flood-prone communities, and they will consider projects further upstream. They do have their own website that you would need to go through, but if anybody wanted information or help with anything on the FEMA side, you're welcome to reach out to us and we can help you navigate that process. In order to submit or to create a new project within the water bank, we have an online system called H2 Loans. It's just a web-based application, and you can go into the website, call my assistant, Mary Pearsall, to set up an account. She'd help you walk through the process. She will, if you have any questions, she's also the individual that would help you with training and, any snafus that you have. She is the be all and end all when it comes to H2 loans. Once you get your project, once you get your ID, then you can go back into the system and submit your project information. I actually am doing another webinar right after this, a training session on how to create a new project. We're making all of those slides available on our website if anybody is interested in seeing how to do that. The system will walk you through the process from start to finish. It's fairly simple. We try to make it as intuitive as possible, and make it almost foolproof in terms of getting through the steps. And again, Mary can help. We also have a support email address that anyone could reach out to and get to somebody on the team to help them if they needed help. But H2 Loans is really your starting point once you've identified a project. Okay. In terms of technical assistance, program staff is able to, help if you're new to this process. We can help you fill out the requests for funds. We can help you navigate the systems. We can also, as I said, help you with the FEMA process. Once you've got a project set up in the system, then we would schedule what's called a pre-application meeting. So this would be a meeting between the iBank staff and the DEP staff who are involved in the review process. So the engineers, environmental reviewers, bond counsel, we walk you through the process. We can answer any questions about eligibility, any questions about the process itself, and the timelines for working through the certification process, which is really the DEP's bread and butter when it comes to this. They do all of their reviews. Once they certify projects, then they're handed off to us for the financing. And on this pre-application meeting, if there are any questions, or if the DEP has suggestions for how to improve the ranking on a project, they can share those with you. And they'll also give you some ideas if there are things that maybe you didn't think of, especially if you're new to the program, that would be eligible for financing. I know when I first started here, I was astounded when one of the DEP team mentioned that garbage cans are an eligible expense because they keep trash out of the waterways. And it was just something I wouldn't have thought of, but they know the ins and outs, they know all of the nitty-gritty details, and they're there to really help maximize the efficiency of these projects. As part of this process, you would need your bond counsel to prepare something that we call our short-term financial addendum form, or short-term FAF. It's just a form with lots of your financial information, your plans, and the bond counsel throughout the state. If they have worked on water projects before, almost every one of them will be familiar with this form. They would prepare it for you, and then the municipality, the borrower, would submit that through the system. The borrower also needs to upload and submit their engineering contract for review. Another form called the LP6A, which really goes into detail of the project cost breakdown according to your contracts. And this form can be updated. You're putting it in based on estimates when you're initializing these projects. So we understand that those things can change, but when we start this review process, we're really looking for details based on your best estimates of how you're going to break down these costs between things like construction, planning and design, administrative costs, etc. And the system does walk you through that. It gives you all of the different cost categories within the screen, so that you don't need to really have that. You don't need to know what those are potentially. You can look at that form to see how to fill it out. There is then a step called your letter of intent, and again, the system will walk you through it. And once you've completed the letter of intent, it takes you to what we refer to as the project loan application, although all of the steps before that are of a piece of the overall application process. And the loan application just again asks you for a lot of detail on the projects, the project descriptions, where the project is located, details about the communities, what is your median income, is it a disadvantaged community? So all of the information that the DEP needs to do a thorough review for eligibility. Okay. And there are a couple of documents that might be helpful to you if you're new to the process. So there is a document on our website, njib.gov, and this is an applicant's guide. So this will give you some more detail regarding the Green Infrastructure Financing Program. The DEP's website contains the IUPs, the intended use plans, and that is, that's a great resource. It's something that everybody should look at, and those get updated throughout the year. It was just updated in September for some program changes, so the one that's in there is very current. I highly suggest looking at that. And the link that we have here is for the Clean Water Program, but they also do a separate one for drinking water. So I know we're talking right now about green infrastructure and clean water, but if you're on the DEP's website and you're interested and it's relevant for you, you can also take a look at the drinking water IUP. And then the DEP also has a stormwater best practices manual available on the web. So that's another great resource for everybody who's looking for more information. Oops. I thought there was one more slide. Sorry about that. I can put my contact information in the chat. If anybody has any further questions, about credit ratings or the credit review process, we could go through that, or just understanding how to get a project into H2 loans and how to move through the process. But I think the takeaway here really is that we do our best to finance as many projects as we possibly can with the money available. We've gotten creative with our financing. We've tapped into other pots of money, including an additional pot from the EPA called WIFIA financing. So we're going to get another $300 million or so over the next 5 years from the EPA to finance a number of projects that would otherwise have had to wait for a bit because they were on the drinking water side, and our funds there are very scarce. And we've also gone out to the financial markets to get to issue some commercial paper to enhance the amount of money available and to free up some of the DEP funds. So we're doing what we can to bring as much money as possible into the state and make as much available to help out with these great projects and to clean up, do some green infrastructure, clean up the stormwater, get these CSOs under control, and especially replace the lead service lines. So there's been a lot of focus on that, as everybody's aware, in the last couple of years. With that, does anyone have any questions, or should we just start waiting till the end?
I don't see any questions in the chat right now, so I can ask, does anyone in the room have any questions? No? Okay, we can move on then to our last presenter, Heather. Thank you, Leigh.
Thank you.
Hi, is everybody able to see my screen?
Yes.
Start this here. All right. Hi, again, I'm Heather Knizhnik. I'm with the New Jersey DEP. municipal finance and construction element, and I'm an environmental reviewer. We review projects under the New Jersey Water Bank program. And I'm gonna talk a bit more about the, I guess, technical side of the green infrastructure projects that we fund through the water bank. And just to give you a little bit of background on this image in the first slide, it's from the Northwest Resiliency Park project, which is one of the ones that Leigh mentioned in Hoboken. And it's going to detain 1 million gallons of stormwater. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of those projects later. So I'm not sure exactly how much background everybody has in all of this, but I figured I would give a little bit of an overview of combined sewer overflows, since a lot of the GI financing through the water bank program is in CSO areas. So just to provide a quick overview of what happens in wet weather events in combined sewer system during normal wet weather events, everything, the wastewater and the stormwater joins together in the pipes and flows to the treatment plant. However, in extreme events, like we're seeing more often with climate change, the aging infrastructure can't handle the excess stormwater, and instead of going to the treatment plant, a lot of it is getting released into the adjacent lakes and rivers in CSO overflow events. And here you see a few pictures of actual extreme weather events in New Jersey, and these are happening more often lately. CSO communities are ending up with flooding and unsafe conditions, unpassable streets, contaminated waters entering into inlets and flowing into nearby water bodies, which is causing, harm to aquatic life. Okay, so green infrastructure, just to kind of go over our definition of what is eligible as green infrastructure in the New Jersey DEP. It's the category of best management practices that can and should be used by municipalities as a strategy to complement gray infrastructure and help manage excess stormwater. GIBMPs use or mimic the natural water cycle to capture, filter, absorb, or reuse water close to the source. So they may treat runoff through infiltration or bioinfiltration into the subsoil, filtration into soils, vegetation, or filtration media, such as the layers of gravel under porous pavement, possibly to an under drain or a detention basin, or they store stormwater for reuse in cisterns or rain barrels. GI features use these processes to manage runoff close to where it's generated, reducing peak flow during wet weather. A few of the reasons why we should use green infrastructure, why we encourage these kinds of projects. As you know, green infrastructure helps to reduce CSO events by reducing peak flow. Therefore, it also helps municipalities to meet long-term control plan requirements. As a matter of fact, communities are required to consider GI as a control alternative strategy. It leads to decreased flooding and safer conditions during wet weather events. There's improved water quality due to vegetative uptake and filtration of contaminants. In projects where the water table allows, they can be designed for groundwater recharge if there's infiltration into subsoils. It's well known that more green space leads to healthier communities, improves health and well-being of residents nearby. Green infrastructure also helps to reduce the urban heat island effect by increasing tree canopy and providing carbon sequestration. Actually, that goes along with my next point. And also urban trees provide shade on hot days. Green infrastructure can make cities more resilient to climate change by helping to reduce flooding that's caused by climate change. As I mentioned before, carbon sequestration from trees. There are economic benefits to green infrastructure, even though some people might wonder if this is an additional added cost and won't pay off. But actually, GI projects provide jobs and increase local property value. There's also a new green infrastructure rule, this Stormwater Rule, which was effective on March 2nd, 2021. And this Stormwater Rule requires new major development to utilize small scale GI BMPs. Here are examples of a few of the GI best management practices that we fund. You'll see a rain garden. We have a stormwater bump out, forest pavement, and we have pavers with open joints, and also street tree trench BMPs, which look like typical street trees, but have a greater ability to absorb stormwater with a design that includes structural soils or cells. And they can be connected and underdrained, and they add to the urban tree canopy. A bit about funding strategies that can be used. So funding green infrastructure can seem tricky through our program, since the BMPs tend to on their own be small scale projects as compared to the traditional infrastructure projects, but there are a lot of options that can be used, and we're encouraging these. One strategy is to incorporate green infrastructure into other larger capital projects, such as pipe replacement and street repaving, where you could include a number of rain gardens or bump outs along maybe some roadways that are already being worked on. Another option is to group smaller GI projects together. So a municipality could propose porous pavement at multiple parking lots throughout, and those could be funded as one joint project. We also have the Resiliency park design model, which has been really effective. And in this model, we have the city or municipality would incorporate a number of different BMPs into the design of the community park. And those can manage a large amount of stormwater together from nearby surrounding streets. And this provides a beautiful, functional, educational community asset. And we really like them to include a lot of interpretive signs and things like that to help out with explaining what the GI features in the park are doing to passersby. Green infrastructure should definitely be considered when planning retrofits of existing facilities or properties and as a redevelopment option. for underutilized sites such as vacant lots or brownfield areas. Just because there has been contamination does not mean that GI can't be used in an appropriate way. It might just be the best option for that area. Now I'm just going to describe two projects which are really good examples of GI initiatives that have been funded through the Water Bank. And one of those is Hoboken Southwest Resiliency Park. And this is providing an example of the Resiliency Park strategy. So in Hoboken, all stormwater in the southwest quadrant of the city flows into the combined sewer system, contributing to CSO events. The southwest neighborhood is also at a relatively low elevation point in the city. So during high tides and rain events, the neighborhood experiences urbanized on-street flooding and a lot of sewer backups. Phase one of this project consisted of the transformation of a 1 acre vacant parking lot into New Jersey's first urban resiliency park using a variety of green infrastructure practices. It includes rain gardens, bioswales, tree pits, porous pavers, and infiltration into subsurface storage chambers. Over an acre of new park space was created with 51 new trees planted, plus impervious coverage was reduced by ½ an acre. Phase one of the innovative stormwater management design included 2 rain gardens, 4 bioswales, almost 12,000 square feet of precast concrete pavers with open joints, and 3 HDPE, high density polyethylene, pipe subsurface detention systems. These features together manage the runoff from the 10-year storm event, which is approximately 10,500 cubic feet of runoff. Phase 2 of the project, which is in the approval process currently, it will expand the park westward by financing the acquisition of the adjacent lot. And the design will include similar stormwater management features with additional park features based on community input. Just to go back 1 second. I just wanted to mention that Hoboken has really been leading the way on green infrastructure with a number of other resiliency parks and projects completed, such as the Northwest Resiliency Park shown on the conceptual slide shown first. And they have a lot of projects completed and underway. And so really a leader on these. The Jersey City Public School number 5 green infrastructure project started when a classroom of high school students noticed intense flooding around their school, and they saw that it was a major issue. They came up with the idea of using green infrastructure to help manage stormwater there and at other locations prone to flooding in Jersey City. The high school contacted Rutgers Cooperative Extension Water Resources Program about a GI evaluation. Then the students calculated rainfall and analyzed how much GI would be necessary to solve the flooding issues. Rutgers then validated the data compiled by the students, and the students pitched the idea to City Council. The design included stormwater planters, pervious pavement, and street tree trenches at the school and at the JCMUA, Jersey City Municipal Utilities Authority, administrative building. The JCMUA sponsored the project and received a $6.6 million loan with $1.3 million in principal forgiveness to complete it. This inspiring project won the EPA's Pisces Award for Clean Water State Revolving Fund projects as an exceptional project. It's a great example of how community involvement, strategic planning, and innovative thinking can lead to big changes. As far as the different funding options available for green infrastructure and CSO control through the DEP, and Leigh discussed this in a lot of detail, so I'm just gonna kind of go over it really quickly. But financing with principal forgiveness continues to be available for GI and CSO projects. And then there's the new sewer overflow and stormwater grant reuse program, which provides funding for projects that address combined sewer overflow correction and or stormwater and subsurface drainage water. DEP also continues to provide water quality restoration grants for a variety of non-point source watershed improvement projects through the 319H program. The New Jersey Future Green Infrastructure Municipal Toolkit is a great online resource that we recommend with in-depth information about planning, designing, and funding green infrastructure projects, as well as the report Unlocking Green Infrastructure Financing, which was jointly produced by the New Jersey Water Bank and New Jersey Future. And that can be found on the New Jersey iBank's website. That's most of what I was planning to cover. If there are any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Does anyone in the room have any questions about the different funding sources, or they have any projects maybe that they were thinking if they would count towards this? Yeah.
Do you have any insight as to when the New Jersey 319 grant funding round might be released for, I guess, 2021 or 2022?
I'll repeat that. Do any of you know when the NJ 319 grant funding cycle will start? Sorry, we're able to hear the question.
I don't have that information, but I could certainly find that out and provide that to the person who's asking the question. But yeah, I don't work specifically in that program, so I don't unfortunately have that detail.
Thank you. Any other questions? I think we don't have any questions here or in the chat right now. Is there anything else any of you would like to talk about while we're here? Thank you for providing your contact information for all the virtual viewers and in-person people. Anything else you'd like to add? Otherwise, I think we'll wrap up.
No, thank you very much, everyone, for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining this session. If you have a moment, please be sure to fill out our brief survey about each session to see, so we can help plan for the conference and future events. Look forward to seeing you all at the sessions tomorrow. And yeah, have a good day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks a lot.
Bye, thank you.